You would never hurt me. Loving made me feel amazing.
Good afternoon and welcome to Working for You. I am Les Roy Williams. I thank you very much for joining us for today's program, which is the first program for the new year. I take this opportunity to wish you health and happiness and safety for 2021. Thank you very much for being with us. I also want to thank all of the radio stations that have worked with us over last year and the years before. We thank ZIZ Radio and we thank ZIZ TV as well. We thank Sugar City FM. We thank Freedom FM, Vaughan Radio in Nevis, and all the other radio stations who have played a supporting role in terms of this program, Working for You. And of course for you, the audience, who continue to support us on a weekly basis, have supported us over the years with this program, which of course brings you information with respect to what is happening in the government, so that you can keep abreast, you can keep informed of what is going on. So thank you very much. Today we are going to be having a discussion on the Ministry of Social Development's Family Matters program. And I have in the studio with me 3 guests who will engage you in a discussion in terms of what this program is all about and how you can benefit from it. I have the director of the counseling unit in the Ministry of Social Development, Mrs. Michelle Delacoudre Blake. Welcome, Mrs. Blake.
Thank you, and good afternoon to all.
I also have Alicia Collins, who is one of the team members, of course, at the counseling unit, and she's a family counselor.
Yes.
Welcome, Ms. Collins.
Thank you very much, Mr. Williams.
And I have Mr. Jeremy Thomas, also from the counseling unit, and Mr. Thomas is also a family counselor. Mr. Thomas, welcome.
Thank you, sir, for having me.
Of course, when we hear the term family matters, it is very loaded because it can be taken in more than one way. On one hand, family matters, we can look at it in terms of the matters of the family, which is a noun.
Yes. Yes.
And then we can look at it and say that the family matters in the sense, then it becomes a verb.
Yes. Yes.
Right, it becomes a verb. So it's actually a very nice name to give to a program. But as we know, the family is extremely important in society. In fact, it's the basic cell of any society, the glue, really, of society, holds the family together, social cohesion, and so on. Now, the family plays basically 3 roles: that of the social, the economic, and the biological. We know that.
Yes.
Those 3 functions are the main functions of the family. Childbearing, which is the procreative, the reproductive function of the family. And then you have child rearing, which has to do with the social function, how children are socialized to be a part of society. And then of course you have the economic function. Children must be supported and you know, and so on. That is also important. But before we start talking anymore, let me get to the meat of the matter. Family Matters program. What is this program? Why was it started?
All right, so of course we have to give context, and you started off by introducing the 2 family matters counselors that we have here with us today. There is a bigger team. There are a team right now of 4 of us who are working right now. But when this program started, let me give you the context of how it started. USAID was doing some outreach work in 3 territories. So this was a part of a pilot work in 3 territories. So St. Kitts and Nevis, I should say, St. Lucia and Guyana were part of the initial pilot project. So why did it come around? So of course we recognize, you started talking about the family, and you recognize that the family has many functions. But the thing that you focused on, or one of the things you focused on, was the thing that we needed to focus on, which is the social functioning of the family. And we recognize here in the region, well, certainly worldwide, but here in the region, families are under stress. And as a result of that stress, it sort of extends into community and federation and countries and so forth. So the goal was to get a program that could work specifically with families to reduce risk factors so that families are better able to protect their children, their youth, and so ultimately that we have citizens, you have young people who then could grow into healthy citizens. And so that is how it came about. Where did the counseling unit come about? So when USAID embarked upon this, they sought a partner. And of course, just in terms of synergies, the counseling department was best suited to facilitate that program, because of course we work with people in making sure that there is development, right? So the Family Matters program was taken in under the counseling department, and so we facilitated that program from the get-go. So we're talking about from 2017, that we started the program. So that is it in a nutshell. There's lots of other things that are going to come out as we talk about the program. It was started with 8 counselors. USAID was the financial backer of this for 100% for the first year, and then of course government came in, and of course we had matching resources over the years. But 8 counselors we started with. Some of the counselors worked in Nevis, and so families over there were served. So in essence, that is it. A youth is identified for services. As a result of that identification, the family then receives services and the intervention starts. And as we go along, you'll hear about more about that in detail. Okay,
so you identified that the project basically started as one USAID. And you deal basically more with the social factors.
Social factors.
So it's psychosocial support.
That's a big part of it.
The psychosocial support, emotional support, and so on for family. You don't deal so much with the material support.
No.
Right. You don't deal with that.
We don't deal with that at all. Yes.
So it is basically support for families.
Yes. Well,
psychological, emotional, and so on.
As
social.
we go along, you'll hear that it's more than just support. Support is a part of it, but it's more than just support, because it's actually changing the direction of family functioning. All right, so you'll hear more about that as we go along. Right.
Okay, so Alicia Collins. Right, you are a family counselor, and tell me a bit in terms of what you do. I heard Mrs. Blake saying that it is much more than support. So let me hear.
Well, Mrs. Blake is so correct. It is more than support. And if I would speak to recent, and then my colleague can go back. As of, we are all in the midst of a pandemic. And we recognize those frontline workers who we see physically, the police, security nurses and all of that. But even in the midst of the pandemic, family counselors, we were frontline workers physically, psychologically, emotionally, and we were able to, we did not expect it, families did not expect it, but we were able to keep families during the lockdown period, keep them engaged, informed, focused, and updated. And because we had extensive training, we were training for over a year before we were able to go out into homes with families. And so we were there. We were bombarded with calls. My children, we don't have anything to do. We were making referrals, connecting families to services. We were there providing that level of support. Okay, parents, everybody's at home for 24 hours. How do we manage? We're having a breakdown. So we had to get right there and figure out with the families a plan, find a routine, get away, turn off the news. We would get the information for you and keep you updated so you're not bombarded with the fearful news and all of those negatives, and work together as a family, come up with a plan for the day and all of that sort. So we were there working with families, and as I would have said, connecting them to services, making runs for families who were not able to do so. And it's so much that we do. We were still having to guide them. We facilitate, we guide. We do not do the work for the family. We are just there as facilitators, and we said that from the get-go, from the moment we interact with the family, they know the work is theirs. We are just there. They are the experts, but we are giving them extra tools for them to work with, in terms of increasing communication, building that level of cohesion, being able to connect with their multi-generational facets, and all of that.
Now, you mentioned in terms of the pandemic and the lockdowns. Now, some of the things that have emerged from these lockdowns, a lot of it had to do with family, because the family is locked down.
Correct.
They cannot come out, and so of course, tension builds.
Correct.
And we've heard about cases of domestic abuse.
Correct.
Because you were there.
Yes.
You're there
Yes.
in the house. Usually, you may have some hours to go out and hang with other people, your friends, and so on. But then you're seeing things probably you've never seen before, because you're there
yes.
all the time with that
Yes.
person, and so on. And so psychological issues came out, and emotional issues, domestic abuse issues, frustration,
Yes.
and so on. How do I deal with this, and so on. Financial, and so the family support.
It was critical.
It's critical.
Yes.
Especially during the pandemic. It's always critical, but
yes.
it became
Yes.
more critical,
Yes.
even with what was
Yes.
happening. Very, very pronounced
Yes.
in terms of what happened with all these lockdowns because of the pandemic, right? Now, Mr. Thomas, how are families encouraged to be a part of the program?
Okay, so again, thanks for having us. We really appreciate it. So how are families encouraged to be a part of the program? Of course, there's a structure. There is a more or less, I won't say a protocol, but there's a structure in place that we offer as a unit. And of course, as Mrs. Blake mentioned earlier, of course, how it started to know. So there's a referral process that one must go through first. Now, as I think Mrs. Blake even mentioned it, the youth is being used as, I don't want to say being used, but they are like the contact point or entry point into some of these families. Because really and truly, when you think about it, a lot of the referrals that we get is usually from the schools, and of course the counselors at the schools will say, you know what, counselor so and so, this is the issue that we have with this particular child. The parent keeps on coming back, and they're saying this is the issue, and we say, you know what, listen, we have a program now, which is a part of the family service, family matters unit, family matters services, that is. And this is what we do first. We allow a referral process where we get signed up. Of course, parents have to sign off and agree for the services to commence. Without that signature, without them saying yes, we can't do anything. Even if the counselors at school says, you know what, this child is problematic and they need help, unless there is a consent, we can't do anything further than that. Of course, once we get that information from the counselor or from the schools, we then go through a processing element where we now put that child into our data system We want a few questions, which again I can't really say, but we want a few questions to our data system. Then that data system calculates everything, all the information that was collected from the child, because we need to know what's happening in the family. So of course we would meet with a guardian, sit down, ask them a few questions, what's happening, what is taking place in the home. Then from that information into our system, it calculates as to, okay, what are some of these risk factors that the family or exist within the family. All right, so after going through those risk factors, then we say, okay, all right, this is what we're going to do. And then from those risk factors, we use it as an entry point into the family, and we pretty much take it from there. So there's a referral process first before we can go into the family and to engage them. So it's referral from school, speak with a parent, we can make contact with them, then we do what we gotta do, enter them into the system, and from that moment, we, based on what the system says to us on the risk factors that we will present, then we enter into the family from that point of view.
Okay, so you basically are saying
Yes.
that you start with the young person,
Yes.
and basically whatever they are manifesting, the behaviors and so on, that might be problematic
Right.
or troublesome.
Yes.
And from there, basically, you link that back to the family
Right.
Yes.
and to see what is happening in the family,
Yes.
what is going on in the family.
Right.
But maybe it's not going on in the family, maybe it's going on elsewhere. You know, that is a question that I would have, because it's not just the family that would have influence on
That's correct.
the
Yes.
young person. The young person is influenced from every angle and every side, every facet of society. Their friends, their their school environment, the church environment, the environment just hanging out on the corner,
Yes.
and so on. But nonetheless, each person, you're correct, is tied to a family.
Yes.
Right.
We don't exist in isolation.
Right.
You know, as I began by saying that society is basically a collection of families,
Families,
and the
yes.
family is the basic unit
Yes.
within
Yes.
society. But I see that you wanted to say something,
Yes.
I
Mrs.
think you
Blake,
wanted
that you
to
were.
say
Yes,
something
I was.
first.
I wanted to. Yes, good, sure.
I'll let you go first. Alicia.
Even though we work with the families, we work to connect families to the broader communities. So we try to get the families to work together cohesively to prevent that child as much as possible from being pulled by the negative influences, and to strengthen the positive influences that exist. So we work to connect families to schools, to church groups, faith-based organizations, community groups and organizations, positive activities that are happening inside of the communities, clubs that are in the schools, family councils. We have worked with friends of the youth as well. So we would ask parents, caregivers, who are your child's friends?
Yeah.
They can come ahead if usually they meet on a Saturday to sit down. We can come at the home on Saturday when that child is there. So we are not just touching the child, we are also planting seeds in everyone who is connected around that child, and we always encourage that multi-generational connection,
Yes.
because we recognize that it is important.
Right, and you touched on something good, because as you said in the beginning, Mrs. Blake, is that the program focuses on the socialization, and basically socialization of that child, that young person.
Of course.
And people have to be socialized.
Yes.
You know, be a part of society.
Right.
And the family is basically the first agent
Yes.
of socialization.
And that
It's the first school,
right.
it's the first courthouse.
Oh yes.
It's the first church.
Nice hospital.
It's the first hospital,
Right.
and so on.
Right.
Yeah.
that family socialization is important. Everything else builds upon that.
Exactly.
The secondary sources, whether it is the school or the church,
Right.
those are secondary sources of socialization. But it all links back to the family.
Yes.
And that is why a program like this is so important.
Yes.
Because as Alicia said, one of the goals is to strengthen the family's hierarchy.
Yes.
Who is in charge of this family?
Yes.
And strengthen that. And out of that strong and cohesive hierarchy comes youth who the family knows how to protect and how to permit. When to protect and when to permit.
Yeah.
In fact, that terminology is one that we use all the time. When to protect, when to permit.
Yes.
Because there is a balancing act all throughout the developmental stage of childhood and youth, especially youth, when it gets to that teenage years, there is a balancing act of knowing how much to let the youth out into those same spaces that you talked about. People on the block, the people in school, the church. When do I pull back? How do I pull back? How do I pull back with a 13-year-old? How do I allow? What's the importance of allowing? Because the youth needs to learn himself too. When do I protect? When do I say no? So it's really sort of navigating those boundaries, or helping families navigate those boundaries, navigate through the conversations they have, through normalizing behavior. The team we talk a lot about normalizing behavior.
Right.
And one of the things that does to help the family is help them recognize that, for example, if you have a teenager who may be spending more time with friends and wanting to take on the actions of friends and so forth, normalizing it. So helping the family to recognize that is a part of the teen development, and it's important for the teen in this way.
Yes.
So that you normalize behavior. So when you normalize behavior, then you could look and see what exactly you have to deal with. Because sometimes parents are so flustered and so just unsure that they sort of nitpick on everything, and that of course is destructive and damaging. So you normalize behavior and say, all right, these are normalized things that teenagers do. Obviously you don't want your teenagers to be just hanging out all over the place all the time. So you normalize the fact that peer influence and peer relationships are important. How do you then take that normal behavior and make it work in a structured way so that your family, your teenager, your youth is safe? So it really navigates all of those, little intricacies in youth development.
Yes. Now, Jeremy, so much is about, when it comes to young people, about connection, how they connect. And we're speaking here about connections. And of course, that connection with the family, young people and their connection with the family. But as I mentioned earlier, they're not only connected with the family, they're connected with, the immediate family, the extended family, their friends, others and so on, within their environment, within the society. Now, how can you help these young people to connect, but at the very same time to disconnect? And what I mean by that is that you're connecting, yes, but maintaining who you are, keeping your values, and so without losing yourself. You see what I'm saying? You want to connect, but at the very same time, you don't want to get lost in that connectivity.
Yes.
Got you.
Yeah.
I will start with this. Usually when we enter into a family, after the first two phases of the process is completed, we usually get from the parents or guardian at the time, the child is this, the child is that, I'm tired of this, I'm frustrated, and when we change what we would say with amongst ourselves, changing the language, when we change that language with the guardian or parent, and we ask them, okay, what are some of the positive things that or you believe from your child or children, and they pause, and it's usually a very long pause, because they're like, okay, they're good at sports, or they're good at their schoolwork or their school subjects. I say, fine, okay, so let us see how we can use the strength of what they are good at and use it within the situation that you think now is making you frustrated. And usually, because one of the things that we do, of course, when we visit their family is family, then we speak with the child, and then we speak with the family again.
Right.
And usually we try to, at one point, we would integrate a rewarding system so that whatever the child, or whatever we would suggest, because again, we're just only facilitators. We don't want the person to get that we're going in to fix the problem or fixing the issue. We're not doing it. We're only facilitating the family to let them listen. You're the one that identified this problem, but we're just here to facilitate you so that you'll be able to strengthen the positives and see how much that positive can literally change the dynamics of the family, the environment, and everything else. So that connection, we use it in such a way where the strength of that youth, whatever that they're good at, whatever that they possess, where the family sometimes don't see until they recognize that, wow, we never really saw this until you came in, until you got here. And because of that, the youth now begin to have that sense of care or confidence with esteem and self-esteem. They build their self-esteem, they build a particular confidence with themselves, that even the parents know. When they never said, you know what, I'm proud of you, I'm happy for what you're doing, the parents are now saying, you know what, I'm happy, I'm proud. And because of that now, there's this connection between the youth, where at first you thought that there was a disconnection, there is now a connection. And then even on when dealing with the outside, again, connecting to family and communities. And again, one of the things that we love to do is to really bring the grandmothers and the aunties and the uncles that are outside of the household together,
the extended
family. And that sometimes, or even most times, that really works on our behalf a lot, because the child will not speak to mommy, daddy, or maybe a sibling or two within the family, but they have an uncle, they have an auntie, they have grandmother or grandfather that they talk to the most.
They're comfortable
talking to. And as soon as we would bring that extended family into our meeting or allow them to be there, there's a whole different dynamics with the child. And because of what grandmother might say or uncle might say, listen, if he or she says, you got to listen to your mommy from now on, the whole environment changes. So the connection, it comes from very different angles that we would have been able to identify as counselors, because we, before we go into a family, we must have our meetings together. We have to strategize, we have to do whatever it takes before we enter into that family. So once we talk, we say, listen, the grandmother is a strong point in this family, and we could use her to help. And once that happens, the connection begin to for me, all the different connecting dots begin to come together. The puzzle begins to pull together. So we use the strength from what they think wasn't being identified at all. We use that, bring it into the family, and all the connections are connected.
Mr. Williams, I want to follow up on that, because Jeremy just highlighted many things in his just excellent description of what happens, and he highlighted many things. I just want to focus on a couple of things. This is a program where the work with families is intentional. Every single visit that the family counselors have with the families, every visit is intentional, meaning that, as he said, there is a plan. They sit down in teams before they go, and they say, look, we're working on this is the situation, and they sit down in teams and they plan and they structure what needs to happen. So it's not a sort of by the way kind of chit-chatting and by the way something comes up. It's intentional. That's number one. Number two, and I'm highlighting some of the differences in this program to other interventions perhaps. Number two, the family counselors, as Alicia said earlier, so I'll go between the two of them, things that came out, extensively trained. One of the benefits we got from USAID when they were a part of, they were the major partner, certainly at first, and the major driver of this, is that they use their extensive resources to make sure that we were effectively trained. We had training upon training upon training upon training from top family therapists in the States that would come down and spend, I mean, how many times they'd come per year? and spend intense week-long training sessions. I mean, if it's one thing we can say is that we got the resources,
and
so we have
in the field experience
and in the field experience. So we have a team of people who are extensively trained in a particular model. Now the model is called Prevention and Intervention Family Systems Model. So it's a specific model with specific ways of dealing with families. It's a 6-month intervention. So you go into the families for 6 months, and each month has a particular activity plan, a particular phase, particular sets of goals, and each of these would be building on each other. So again, I just want to highlight the fact that this is so intentional. You go into the families, and Jeremy just talked about it, from a strength-based approach. Now, a lot of times when people work with families, it's about the problems. The problems of the family, the problems that the parents not doing, the problems of the children, problems. A lot of these families hear that again and again and again. So they disconnect from society, because they go to school and they hear they're the problems. They go to church and they hear they're the problems. We go into the families and say, wait a minute, you're doing this so well. You are doing this so well. And many times they could tell you, and they will tell you, that the family stand back and be like, well, I never realized that that was a strength. So I'm not going to talk too much. I'm going to let them talk a little bit more. But certainly strength-based. Another difference is that everybody is involved in decision making. So there's a hierarchy, but it doesn't mean that the hierarchy makes all the decisions. And of course, when there's involvement in decision making, it means that there's communication. So it opens up the communication process, which of course then lends itself to all of the other strengths we're talking about here. You have children and families talking with each other. Jeremy just talked about the multi-generational approach. That again is intentional. From the first time they sit down, they draw up and say, who do we need to pull in here? Who do we need to pull into this? And they sit down and they work on who they need to pull into this. So definitely it's a strength-based approach, and the family is involved. It changes the language, and Jeremy talked about that. The language is one of can do and positive, and we call it reframing. So our motivation, our encouragement to the family all the time is, how do you change that? How do you look at that differently? So I just wanted to put some of that out there so that we could understand that this is different, and it's not only different, it is proven to work, and we have the data to show it, because it's also data driven. Children go in, there is a tool that is done to identify the risk factors. After the intervention, well, there's one midway, and then at the end of the intervention, you end line, right? You check again and see what has happened since the intervention, and our numbers have been fantastic. The change in family, the risk factors have gone down, so it really works. So I just wanted to put that out there as part of the, just pulling together some of the things they said. And
if I can add to the same question you put forth to Jeremy, when we focus on the multi-generational facet, we allow grandparents, great-grandparents to share stories that make the family proud. So there are stories of strength and resilience, and the young person, sometimes not even the parents know, because everybody's just so busy, and these discussions are not happening. So when a young person hears, well, back then my family, my grandmother, my great-grandmother's step was that step that brought everybody together on a Saturday, and persons in on my block ate from my grandmother's pot, my great-grandmother's pot. This storm happened, or this flood happened, and our grandparents led this street out of this into something safe, and then this child start to feel proud
and connected,
and connected. It's like, okay, well, I mean, I this is my place. My family has a right to be in this community. My family has made a contribution to this community. How can we continue on in our generation, continuing this legacy that our family has created?
Yes, and this year, in the Calypso competition, Sharon Cannonier, she works at the Department of Youth, but she had a very powerful song in terms of those proverbs,
sayings, yes.
the sayings
Yes.
and so on
Okay.
that
Yes,
come
yes.
from, way back.
Mama used to
And
say,
Mama used to say
yeah,
this,
yes.
and Mama used to say that. I thought it was a beautiful song,
Yes.
because then, those are being used as well to help children in terms of learning, their
Yes.
socialization,
Yes.
helping them in terms of, the values and all of that, and that is one of the way that you can also teach young people. But the approach is what I like, is that you do not begin from a place of dysfunction.
No.
Right.
You begin from a place of function,
Yeah.
Strength.
and what I hear you saying, Jeremy, is that also you do not go there to solve problems.
Right.
What you're doing is because people have it within them to solve their own
of
problems.
course, of course.
It's
And
empowering.
it's
Yeah.
and you empower
Yes,
people.
yes.
So you help them with some of the tools that they need for problem identification and problem solving.
Yes.
Right. And you have seen results.
Oh,
Great
yes.
results.
Oh,
You,
yes.
you guys could, talk about some of the things. I mean, they have stories
Yeah.
that,
And as Mrs. Blake would have mentioned, and Jeremy as well, we use a tool. So our program, our approach is data driven. So we are going in and we start the process. We already know how many risk factors, 5 or more risk factors. You're eligible for
Right.
service.
under this
And
program.
yes, and if you fall below, we connect you to other services.
Right.
And as we go along, in the mid of our intervention, 3 months in, we conduct another survey, another assessment. This gives us the opportunity, as well as the families, the opportunity to see what has been working, what we need to focus more on, what we can just continue to affirm families, because we do a lot of affirmations.
Yes.
We're always in there congratulating them, applauding them, praising them. And as my colleagues would have said, we have been changing languages
Yes.
in homes, in families across St. Kitts and Nevis. And so we are applauding them, and we know, okay, so we recognize this factor would have gone down, but this one spiked a bit. Okay, let us focus here.
Right.
So in the middle of our intervention, we are able to make changes.
Right.
And we are able to share with families. Okay, these are you have been doing excellent in this. Is there anything else you would like to focus on? And we still ask them what it is they want to focus on, and we are able to work our way in with our data.
Right.
And at the end, there is another assessment, and we get an idea again as to what has worked,
Yes.
because then we don't just drop the families.
Right.
At the end, we still maintain a level of connection with them, and so we are able to pass the baton to the
Right.
family. We step back.
Yes.
In phase 7, phase 6, we step back. We said, you are the leaders, this is your certificate. Go ahead, sit down as the head of the family, decide who will step up and who will step back at what point. Craft everything together, and then you come back and you have a meeting with your family to decide, to discuss the changes going forward.
And just in terms of some of the things that they've seen, just anecdotally, they've seen parents who may not have spoken to each other for
Yeah.
years
Yeah.
come together and work facilitatively
Yeah.
and,
Yes.
and develop a different relationship.
Yeah.
We've seen parents change their strategy of discipline,
Yes.
move it away from that punitive to having conversations that then yield results. We've seen children step up to the plate, young
Yes.
people step up to the plate and be engaged in the household and what's going on there. We've seen families come together to plan celebrations and
Yeah.
all of them execute and do and just have a great time. We've seen the multi-generational
Yeah.
where people come in
Yes.
from the family and become a part of the functioning of the family. We've seen amazing changes. I mean,
Yes.
I may have
Yeah.
forgotten some things.
Yeah,
but
we
we've
have
seen
also
the things.
seen families becoming so empowered that they want to own their land.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we have seen young persons starting
Yes,
businesses.
entrepreneurship. Yes.
And we have also seen young persons, their grades
Yes.
improved,
Yes.
and their
Yeah.
class, the stream has
Yes.
improved from A4 to A2, and teachers are saying if it was not for just this little thing, that child would have gone up to A1. And we say okay, and we have heard from teachers. I mean, we are hearing more from this parent.
Yes,
we are
exactly.
able to call them and reach them, and parents are saying, you know, the teacher actually sent me a message saying that the child has homework.
Yes.
And
these are
Yes,
parents
and
who
these
might
are
have been
pe-
disconnected before.
these are parents when we would have stepped into the homes, they would have had reasons why they don't trust service providers.
Right.
And so we had a lot of walls to break down bit by bit. But because we're in there saying, you are awesome, you have been doing an amazing job, we congratulate the family, you have kept this family together in spite of all of the difficulties. How do you manage working 6 jobs and your child is still able to go to school and you're able to get up? And we have been, and then they're like, okay, yes, I never realized. Wow, are you sure? Me, like, we have heard, families say, I have never heard anything positive about my parenting skills ever, fathers and mothers.
Right.
And so when we say, but you're doing an amazing, you sure? I am. Of course, and we love, because as Jeremy would have said, even when we get the information before we enter the family, we are looking at every possible information we get. What can we say positive to this family? We are not going in to blame anybody. We are not going in to say you have been doing wrong. No, we are going in to say these are your strengths. Let's build on them.
Exactly.
And as we build on them, they just start to open up. They tell us, okay, these are the issues we have, these are the little challenges we have been facing. Just by continuing to affirm every time we go into the families.
It's amazing.
Yes, it is.
And
It
can
really
I add
is.
something as well too? Even while our listeners out there they may be saying, wow, one of the things I want to reassure them is that we are sticklers for confidentiality.
Yes, of course.
We don't play with that. Even while it would have been mentioned that because one of the things that we and Miss Blake, she drives her course again, that was the first thing she even made sure she said to us, listen, confidentiality is something that we take seriously here. And yes, we speak in teams, but a lot of times as individual family counselors with cases, I may present a case to Alicia, but Alicia really don't know. She don't know who is. So at the end of the day, she knows, yes, these are some of the factors, because we sit together or we team up together to speak about a case based on
the case. You don't use names.
We don't use name. This is the case. This is what's happening. This is what presented. Even when we sit with Mrs. Blake. So Mrs. Blake, this is the first unless it's a one-on-one, because we know what it is on a one-on-one ourselves and Mrs. Blake and the relationship that we have. But once we group together as a strategic team, we sit and we say, listen, this is what's happening, ABC, and how do you think I should go about doing this, or what do you think is suggested? Because again, when we go into the home as well, we make sure we stress confidentiality. We make sure that, listen, whatever is said here stays here. And so I just want to make sure listeners know why we get all excited and they're probably saying, wow, is that your business, it's not going to be heard. And as a matter of fact, we never had any reports of any of our families saying they heard their information outside on the road and they want to know what's going on. No. We make sure at the end of the day that their business is safe with us, and that everything that is said and done happens right in the meetings, and that's it.
But Jeremy, just to say, just to say, one of the things that I know happens, and you're right, we stress confidentiality and we maintain it. But I know one of the things that happens is that people become so turned on by what they have experienced that they tell people, this is my family counselor.
And that's
it's like we're out in the public, and I mean, like, because
they're transformed. The transformation.
So it says a lot.
Yes.
And what you mentioned, Jeremy, is so important in terms of the confidentiality, because we live in a society where we talk about nigger house,
nigger business,
nigger business, and our society is so consumed
Correct.
with that.
Correct.
Yes.
Right.
And we need to empty out the negativity.
Yes.
We need to empty it out.
Yes.
And that nigger house culture that we have is a very negative culture. We even had something in our carnival at Christmas time and so on. I don't see it now where they come
Yes.
around
Oh, nigger
and it's
business.
nigger business,
Nigger
nigger
business,
house, what
yeah.
this kind of a thing. We seem to like that sort of a thing. But most of it is really to pull people down.
Yes. But we don't
But
like
not
that at
really
the
to-
counseling center.
No.
Not really to build the people
Yes,
up. And so I'm happy to hear that
Yes,
that you
absolutely.
spoke about the confidentiality, which is so important in terms of helping people to grow,
Yes.
the nurturing,
Of
the
course.
healing,
Yes.
and that is important, and the building of that relationship with the family, because people are not just going to trust you like that.
Right.
You have to
No,
go in and then a
course,
relationship
build
is
it.
built.
Yes, yes.
So we have
And
to-
as I was going to say, the young persons, even parents may open up a little bit more, but the young persons, they are very protective of their spaces,
Yes.
of their information, of their
Yes.
identity. And a young person can tell how genuine you
Yes.
are
Yes.
They
without
can.
even saying anything.
Right.
And so but when we look at how our young persons have responded to
Yes.
us, we know that we are doing something
Right.
trustworthy. And even when we would have done a survey and we were asking them what it is you like about your council the most, trustworthiness, their level of confidentiality, being able to boost their self-esteem. Those are the feedback we were getting from the young people.
That's right.
So it shows that we are not only leaving an impact on the caregivers, but we are also leaving an impact on young people, the same young people who we hear so much negatives about, but we see these young people in a different light.
Yes.
Just because we change the conversation. There was a
Also,
Calypsonian who said
so change
the conversation.
Yes.
Miss Independent.
Yes,
Yes.
yes, and
We need to change the conversation.
yes, because we enter and as Miss Independent said, we change the conversation, and as our reigning queen, as our reigning queen, she's one of my favorite songs, as she sang and said, it takes all of us.
We're in this together.
Yes,
Together,
it
yes.
takes all of us, and it's not just a one-off approach. Even when we strategize, it takes all of us.
Yes.
Yeah.
We sit together and we get different perspectives.
Yes.
Okay, this is the information. We're not relaying the names and
Right.
who this person is, but this is
the
it.
situation.
Can you please use your lens and tell me something else that I can do? Maybe
Yes.
I can try something else. That is the approach you take. When we go into the home, we talk the same thing.
Yes.
You have to work together. You are a team. You can have a pack of dominoes, and if one domino is missing, you don't have a game.
Right. Yeah.
And so everybody has a part to play.
Yeah.
And those are the things that we say
You
to
have the
families.
domino effect. One is affected, all is affected.
Of
So
course.
the whole set comes
Exactly.
tumbling down.
Yes.
Now, how I'm interested in knowing how do families qualify for the program? Who qualifies? And what if someone does not meet the qualifying criteria?
Okay, so let me go back to. So either Jeremy or Lisa, perhaps
We
both of
both,
them,
Yeah.
spoke about
Risk factors.
qualifying, right? So the tool that brings you into the program measures risk factors. So there are 9 risk factors, specific risk factors that the tool measures. I think there are about 150 questions. 9 risk factors that are measured. Sorry. So it takes the youth about maybe an hour,
45 minutes.
45 minutes to an
45
hour
hour.
to go through and give the responses. Now, just so that you know, the tool is developed so that people can't lie. In other words, sometimes people might say, okay, I think this is what they want me to say, but it
Yes.
catches it in the whole
Yes,
process,
yes.
right? Yes, what's it called? The validity of the tool.
Yes,
yes.
Right. So it catches it. So the tool is able to pick up risk factors. If an individual has been identified by 5 risk factors, they then become eligible to be a part of this
5 or
program.
more.
5 or more.
Yes.
So eligibility then offers you the space Of course, as Jeremy said, there has to be consent. You know, I have to want to, but eligibility offers you the space. So then, of course, then we have that intentional, manualized, structured, phased approach with specific ways of working with the family. For those families that don't meet the criteria, and there may be some reasons why you don't meet the criteria. For example, issues related to serious mental illnesses or serious mental presentations, mental health presentations, are not a good fit for this. Issues related to extreme substance use disorders and so forth are not a good fit for it. So there's some things that don't fit this. Of course, there's some situations where people may not have 5 risk factors, but they may need something. They may need an after-school program. They may need a parenting program. So as you know, both of my colleagues said, they may qualify for another type of intervention, maybe within our ministry or within the service. Maybe something in youth. They may qualify for something else. And so one of the things that we do is perhaps guide them to, point them to. You know, you're not qualified for this service, but we don't want to leave you without a service because there's been some identified need. So, but that is how you get in. So once there's it's Y-setted to the tool, identification of 5 or more risk factors, voluntary participation in the process, and then, you know, be linked with a family counselor.
Okay. Have you met with resistance?
Of course.
And I would like to know, how do you deal with that, Alicia, with the resistance? I mean, because that is a key part. I mean, you're going to meet with some roadblocks, you know, bottlenecks, whatever you want to call them, and how do you actually deal with that? Because that, you know, it's important that you get over that hurdle if you want to go any further.
So,
well, our first year was the most challenging year because it was a new approach. No service provider was entering into any home. We usually would work in a community center, a community setting, a school, but we were asking families to allow us into their space. And I mean, and this space, sometimes we would have met on a pasture, but it has to be a quiet, confidential space. We would have met on fields and stuff like that. And I mean, we would have gotten some resistance. Person was saying, well, I don't trust you all. I don't know if you all are here to take away my children. I don't know. So we had to stick with our original plan. We are speaking positives. And so we had to sell our program. What we did not do, we did not disrespect their space, but we planted a seed. We let them know these are what we stand for, and in the event that anything should come up, even if and we are aware of everyday challenges with young people, we say, even if you're called to a school and you're not certain how to go about that, you can call us. We would accompany you. And we planted that seed. We go back to the drawing board in our teams, and Mrs. Blake she would say, have you tried this? Have you tried that? And we're there brainstorming. Okay, can we say something differently? And we allow the week to pass, and the following week we would call again, you know, respectfully. We are just calling to check in on you to see how you're doing, you know, how Johnny is doing, how Susie is doing, is everything going well? And they would say yes, and then sometimes the phone ring, well, actually, you know, Johnny and Susie were at this principal's office, and okay, that's it. And tell me more. And but it took a lot of training for us to get to this point, because we had to change our language, and we had to focus on behaviors and not emotions. So we choose our words carefully, but we always leave. There was still some parents who in the first cohort who caregivers who would have said no, but in the second time around they were calling us. You remember that program you were telling me about? Can you please come and visit me? Because the program, the results spoke for
The
itself,
results.
and we reached to the point where we had caregivers saying to
Yes.
other parents in PTAs at schools, you know, I was meeting with this family counseling
Yes.
and they were doing a very good job
Yes.
with helping us to. And then we started to get all of these referrals from these parents.
Right.
But at the first cohort around, it was very demanding. We were getting a lot of opposition, but we kept on going, but we did not press forward in a negative light.
Right.
We just let them know we are here for you if you need us. And we moved on, and you know, we go back and we group and we call to check in on them, just a
Yes.
phone call. How are you doing, as I would have said. And so we are doing much better.
I wanted to also add something to what Alicia said with resistance, because she talked about resistance from perhaps, you know, going into the families, and the families quite, you know, not sure what you're coming for and so forth. But I also want to look at resistance from the point of view of the positive side of it, because whenever we did our trainings, what did the trainers always say to you to use resistance as? Use it as a tool. In other words, you're going into families and you're talking about changing
Yes.
structure. Change is difficult.
Yes.
So resistance is natural,
Yes.
right? So the encouragement always is, if there is resistance, how can you as a counselor grow? By shifting what you're doing.
Yes.
The counselors were encouraged to look at resistance as, what am I not doing,
Yeah.
rather than the family
But the
doesn't want
family,
me
yes.
here. So what am I not doing? How can I change that? And that in and of itself is an actual growth tool,
Yes,
because
yes.
then the counselors continue to grow and grow.
Yes,
and
yes.
I have had an amazing team
Yes.
that really has grown from year to year, from
Yes.
cohort to cohort. Just an amazing team, and the
Yes.
growth has been just tremendous. And so, as I said before, we got the benefit of the USAID training, and they were able to take on the training.
Yes.
So these people, when they go in and they meet resistance, they don't say, well, what happened to that family?
Exactly.
They say, what can I do
What am
differently?
I? Yes.
And that's
Yes.
a part of, that's again how we are different.
Yes.
Yeah, right. So one of the important things that I'm hearing is that, of course, you are assisting others, but at the very same time, in the whole process, you yourself, you are being developed.
Of
Of
course.
course.
That's
Because
Of
it's that
course.
symbiosis, that
Yes.
symbiotic
Yes.
relationship.
Yes.
the
Yes.
You know,
development,
I
yes.
always tell people all the time that I teach. I like to teach. I've lectured for a few years. And the classroom is not just about me imparting
Yes.
knowledge.
Yes. Yes.
I learn so much
I know.
in the classroom.
Yes.
I am learning,
Of
Yes.
course.
even though I am teaching.
Oh yes.
You know, and that is how it always is.
Yes.
You see, because you're benefiting, they're benefiting.
If you would remember at the beginning when I said the family is the expert, we don't just say it, we believe it, we
Yes.
live it, we are invested in this program.
Yes.
And when we enter, we take a back seat, we say, you are the experts, teach
Listen
us.
to you. Yes.
Teach us, we want to understand how you're getting this done. You know how you're getting to get 6 children ready, and you're still able to put food on it. We want to know. I mean, and we mean it. We say it not because we were trained to. We mean what we say, and they recognize the genuineness in us as well.
Yes.
So we are really there to learn.
Right.
We are there to listen, to affirm, and to learn. That's what
Right.
we are there for. And then we have a little bag of tools where we can provide the
Yes.
little assistance and the support.
Okay, we are going to go to the phone lines. We will continue our discussion, but the numbers to call for those of us who are listening, my esteemed audience, is 465-2555. That's the local number. And the overseas number is 1718-577-2916. I repeat those. It's 465-2555. That's the local number. And the overseas number is 1718-577-2916. We welcome your calls. Right. And so therefore, you work along with other social institutions. It's a partnership.
Yes.
isn't it? And so
It is.
therefore sometimes you have to make referrals
Of course.
because we're dealing with the social institution of the family.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
But at the very same time, there are other social institutions that are connected.
Yes.
Education is a social institution.
Our biggest
Our
partner.
biggest, yes.
Religion is another social institution.
Yes.
And I'm talking about spirituality. I'm not talking
Yeah.
the bigger
Right.
picture. You also have the whole justice system
Oh, yes.
as another social institution. And we can think of those as some of the major
part of it,
social
yes.
institutions within our society. Because sometimes people may have problems of delinquency, they may run afoul of the law, they may have problems with learning. As you correctly said, you've seen the grades of students improve
Yes.
just by intervention.
Yes.
Yes.
You know, and I suppose that will work for all the other things.
Yes.
Yes.
You know, people want to be loved.
Yes.
People want to be appreciated.
Respected.
People want to be respected, and so on. And when we get all of those things into the mix,
Yes.
then you see a whole different,
Correct.
transformation.
Yes.
Yes.
You know.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things that happens is because the family counselors are so ingrained in the family unit, they develop what I would like to call a third eye. They get to see
Yes.
things clearly.
Yes.
So they are ideally placed to be able to say, this family needs additional support this way. And it has happened. This family could benefit from this particular thing. We also have worked in collaboration with other partners, probation and child welfare and so forth, too, right? To make sure, yes.
And
Right.
I also think, I know the work that we do, the level of access we have to families, we are able to help in creating policies,
Right.
changing policies,
Correct.
because we get a bird's eye view of what
Yes.
persons are just staying on the outside,
Yeah.
assuming, but we know.
Or sometimes people on the outside see maybe one
One-
facet.
Right.
You see the
But we
whole
see multiple-
picture.
yes.
You see the whole picture. And that allows for a lot of creative work, that
Yes.
allows for connections, that allows for being able to make analysis of what families really need.
Yes.
You know, this really allows for some in-depth understanding of what the families are experiencing and what they go
Right.
through. Yes.
Right. Is there any sort of I know you going and you help these families. What about the ongoing relationship to make sure that things don't break down? And because things sometimes break down. Sometimes you have a new car.
Jeremy.
You have a new car. And of course, when you have the new car, sometimes you don't think that new
Yes.
car one day will become old.
Yes.
But if you don't maintain that car, take proper care of that car, it will break down
Someday.
some faster than anything else. You have to make sure that the oil is there and you know it has water and
Yeah.
all of that sort of a thing. So we see improvement. You've seen successes
Yes.
and things like that. But at the very same times, these are things that have to be built upon.
Yes.
And there has to be some sort of a ongoing evaluation sometimes to make sure that things are still going right and so on, because we're human beings. Things break down and sometimes we can say, but you see, and we start looking back. And when we start looking back, we turn into a pillar of salt.
Yeah.
You know, like Lot's wife, right?
That's
Right.
right.
I think as you said that one, I'm reminded of one of my cases where after we went through all the phases for the first 6 months, and pretty much like maybe after 2 weeks after, you know, the parent called frantic, what's going on? And so I remember just in the middle of all that I said, okay, calm down, let's take a deep breath. remember what we did in this particular phase, and how things transpired, and the approaches and the strategies that you used, that you came up with as a family. Remember what we did, and they'd be like, okay, yeah, sure, okay, all right.
Right.
Are you using those same strategies? I did, but I'm not really sure. I said, okay, look, so let's take it up step by step, because at this point in time, we have already given that certificate, or we have already said to them, listen, you got to take over now. This is you.
Yes.
So we don't want to just always be that individual to always go back.
Right.
We're not that type of counselors, or this is not what we really there to do. So we go back to remind them this is what we're doing, and even in the middle of doing that, if there's a case where we have to now suggest, okay, let's try one of the things that we probably never did during the sessions, and let's see how that works. And usually after that phone call, you really don't hear from the parents again, unless you maybe you yourself may call and say, how things happened from last week. Did everything? You said everything went perfect. We spoke, we came together as you left us with, and things are now going smoothly.
Yes.
So the ongoing process is not like we're just gonna go back into the family to start over everything again.
Right.
But it's the little 5-minute or 10-minute phone calls just to give them a reminder, because as you said, we're humans, things happened, but at the same time, we just need that reminder as well, that hey, remember what we did and it worked. You know for sure it worked. There is no doubt in your mind that it won't work. It will work. So let's try it this way again, and it happens.
Yeah, we give them the power.
Yes.
They have the power.
Yeah.
No, Mrs. Blake, what measurement tools do you use, to measure success?
Right. So we measure success variety of ways, and we started talking about the tool called the YSET, and so that stands for Youth Service Eligibility Tool. So it's the tool that gets you in. So that has to be the thing that you measure, because obviously when you go in and there's certain things that are identified, when you come out, there should be a difference after the intervention. So that's one way of measuring. Certainly through our the cohorts that we've had, just overall we have been able to document a 73% overall reduction rate in risk factors. The first year, I think it was about 59%.
Yeah.
The second year it jumped to 90. And that may have been the second cohort of families, and that may have been because there was additional training. The counselors became more comfortable in understanding the model, and they just knew how to work it with the families. So there was a lot more competency there. So we measure it through that. But I tell you, we measure it with our stories. And when we sit in our team meetings and we hear the stories coming in from different places. When USAID was closing off this, USAID CFYR was closing off this, they did an analysis of some of the impact on young people, and they chose young people from St. Kitts to highlight in their report, so to speak, because there had been amazing work done with people in St. Kitts. So we measure it through the YSET that says to us, these are the reduction rates that we've seen, and we measure it with the fact that the regional counterparts are able to say, you are doing something good here. And we measure it when we sit down in our team meetings weekly, our supervision meetings weekly, and we hear what is happening on the ground. So, yes.
And we measure by the referrals.
And the referral
the
process,
caregivers.
and what else?
I think I want to add this too, even from what Mrs. Blake said. I think the model that USAID left us with, it personalized us. It allowed us to put our own different personalities within the model. We at first when we got the model, it was like, oh my gosh, how are we going to do this? But afterwards, with the trainings that we got, it allowed each person, each counselor, to use the model in accordance to their personality. And I think that's how we really got a bulk of the work done, because if it wasn't for that sort of access, I think we would have still be struggling along the way. but our personalities allow this program to be what it is, and what I think it's going to be in the future.
Yes.
And because of what's happening now, as Mrs. Blake says, listen, the successes are in the stories.
Right.
It's not just what was given to us, because we appreciate everything that was given to us,
Right.
but it's in the stories.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
Right.
yeah.
Yes.
What are some of the family matters that you have encountered? We are not divulging
Yes.
Right.
names
No, no.
and so on.
Right,
We're
right.
speaking
No, no,
in general. What are some family matters that you have encountered?
I will start with mine. I guess on my end, most of my cases would have pretty much involved maybe like youth coming home pretty late. You know, they're out late. The parents may give a particular instruction and they pretty much ignore it and that kind of stuff.
I sometimes, I think we should have laws for that. Sorry to cut you off, but I think that is becoming the norm. Now I see young people on the street very late at night. I mean, when I was growing up, we were told you had to be home by a certain time, and you better be home by a certain time.
Right. Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
I think one of the things our program it has been able to do is set rules within the home that must be followed.
And everybody
Like-
was
and
involved.
Everybody, right, and
Yes.
everyone within the family would
Was
have been a
involved.
part
Including-
of that
including the
situation,
young person.
including young person. So what tends to happen is that when we all come and we sit together and say, listen, John, you're gonna be back home by 7 o'clock every single night with all your activities, with everything that you do throughout the day. You're gonna be back home by 7 p.m. and that's it. Is this the decision that we're going to agree upon? Yes. Yes, I'm John. Yes, I'm so. Yes, I'm there. Yes, I'm here. And what tends to happen is that
I am John,
Yes.
and I am asking you, why do I have to be home at 7 o'clock at night? Because sometimes
Yes.
what happens is that we set a lot of rules and so on, but you need to let the young people know what's behind the rules
That's right.
and why are you
Right.
doing
That's
this.
it.
right, and that's where the discussion takes
Yes.
place. Because again, the program is very intentional.
Yes.
So the mere fact that rule was set, it would have been because of what would have been
Happening.
discussed, what was
Right.
happening, what was
Right.
taking place,
Right.
and a lot of things that would come about from especially these discussions is the risks that are taking place on the outside. You know, John, you could be easily walking past and now unexpected drive-by shooting. You never know what would have happened or taken place, and you could have easily been involved, and we're just trying to protect you from that. As Mrs. Blake mentioned earlier, we just have to know when to protect and when to permit. So usually the discussion evolves and dissolves pretty much around protecting and permitting. So usually by the time we get to the end game, as I would call it, pretty much the youth is then focused on, okay, you know what, my mom cares, my father cares. You know, as a matter of fact,
Yes.
the auntie that I love so much
Yes.
that we got into the meeting, that multi-generational connection that we got into the meeting, they care.
Right.
And I think that it becomes a turning point for the youth.
Yes.
Yeah.
So when the decision is made, okay, are we going to be here by 7 p.m. tonight? Fine, good.
Yes.
And
just-
Yes.
it adds to, it allows for discussion.
Yes.
If
Yes.
for some reason I can't be there here by 11, I mean by 7, sorry, do I just not show up? No.
Yeah.
So then you put steps
that's-
in place
yes.
for how. So if something is happening, who do I call to say I'm
Right.
running late and why? It then becomes just a very inclusive experience, because
Yes.
as you said, things happen.
Yes.
But you don't want the things to be, oh well, something happened and I just couldn't come.
Right.
Yeah,
How
I-
do you engage the family so that again they all know?
You know why I say that though? I say that because I have seen in my many years, more than 3 decades, that we tend to put rules in place. We tend to legislate, even at government level, at every level. Legislation. What about education?
That's right, what we do.
Yes.
So it can't just be, I'm setting rules, I'm making laws.
Yes.
Are we educating people about these very same laws?
Exactly.
And then we like to use this quote ignorance of the law is no excuse for breaking the law. But the very fact is that many people are ignorant of the law.
Yes.
Why are they ignorant of the law? Because there has been no education
Yes.
with respect to the law.
Awareness, yes.
And so therefore, how it is that you're going to hold somebody accountable
You see, a key.
when you are not educating about the law and then
Correct.
throw it in their face
Correct.
that ignorance of the law is no excuse for breaking it. And they like to quote that.
Correct.
we-
Correct. But
do
a key
follow-ups.
component of what we do, we allow the young persons to take responsibility and accountability. How? We sit with them in our one-on-ones. Okay, they would say, Daddy or Mommy is always shouting. Okay, let's sit. What happens before Mommy and Daddy shouts? Oh, they were asking me to do the dishes. So after you did not do the dishes at that particular time, Mommy and Daddy shouted. Yes. And then what happened after Mommy and Daddy shouted? When I got up and did it, what happened after you did it? Nothing. So and then you go back home and they're like, oh, it's like an aha moment. Oh, my behaviors have some sort of effect on Mommy and Daddy shouting at home. And so that is what we do. So even with setting the rules, the young people at the table, they are saying, okay, Mommy, Daddy, you are saying 6. What about 6:30?
Right.
Okay, you have dishes at 6:45. So if you're getting at 6:30, are you saying yes? Are you saying you're gonna be doing your dishes at yes? And if you do not, because there are rewards, there are consequences. It's a balance.
Right.
If you do not do the dishes, what happens?
Right.
Well, maybe. How about tomorrow? The following day, you do not go to practice.
Yes.
But Mommy, no.
Yes.
So what are we going to agree upon?
Conversations.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's a
Conversations.
conversation. And then we
It's
are
a
teaching, we are
conversation.
equipping our young persons
Yes.
with negotiating skills
Okay, right. And decision making skills.
and decision making skills
That
as
is
well.
correct. And we have a paradigm in the family that I don't know where we get this thing from, but we like to hit. Everything is that we're beating. And they like to throw this thing in your face about the Bible say, oh, do not spare the rod and spoil the child, from Proverbs and all that sort of a thing. But they've taken it literally to mean a literal rod that you're supposed to beat somebody with. What it basically saying is that there must be discipline. Discipline does not always come with beating, corporal punishment and all of that sort of a thing. And if you're going to punish also, you must educate. You must educate, not just punish. So therefore, people are being punished. Why am I being punished? Why is this the consequence of my behavior?
Yes.
So that I will not do it again, not for the fear of punishment, but because I know doing it has consequences and it is wrong.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
But you see, this goes back to a cultural change, a mind change, because the truth is, parents, you find parents, you remember all of the harsh punishments and all of that you got when you were younger. and then we grow up and we vow never to do that to our children, but we end up doing the same thing because what we adapt to is how we were raised. And so it takes a lot of awareness, a lot of education, as you would have said.
The relationship, sometimes it's the building of that relationship.
Yes, correct.
And if you build that relationship, it cuts down on rebellion. You see, it cuts down on rebellion.
Yes. So and that's where our program comes in. Parents, they are really trying.
Yes.
But they do the best they can with what they know.
Right.
And that is why we're entering with new tools.
Right.
Yes, Mommy, B2, and sometimes we would have sat with parents one-on-one and said, and parents would express to us, I remember I was getting corporal punishment, and it was only when I know I'm an adult, I said, I was being abused. And then you say, so when this happened, what was the result of this? And so how are you punishing your children now? And it's being able to connect the dots for them to see what happened to them and what they are doing to their children.
Yes.
And I mean, they really mean well.
Yeah.
And they love their
They
children.
mean
And
well.
yes,
Yeah.
but
Yes, and so sorry, Alicia. So
It's
so
okay.
so what we are doing then is giving them that critical thing, which is
Yes.
the option of other things.
yes.
Because it's one thing to want to do something different, but without a knowledge of what
What
other
to do.
things,
other things
Yeah.
different,
exist.
you
Yes.
you don't have anything else.
Yes,
So we're
correct.
providing that sort of very crucial connection for
Yes.
them to have something else.
Yes.
Yes. Good. So now tell me, how many families have you seen? The numbers of families that you have served. Do you have record of that?
So in the first year, we served about 60 something families.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
That, yeah.
Yes, about 60 something families. And the second year, I think the total number after some of the adjustments with COVID and so forth, I think the second year turned out to be, I think overall we've served about 100 and something.
yeah.
100 and something families,
yes.
huh?
And remember I said we had an overall, with the 2 years, of 73% reduction in risk
Risk
factors.
factors.
That's significant.
Yes. Very.
That's
Yes, you know,
significant.
I think it's a step in the right direction. I see more of that happening, more intervention, more programs for our young people. Because we have to start with our young people.
Right.
You know, and then we'll have a better society, of course. And of course, the older people have to set example for the younger people.
Right.
I also see that, for example, the Ministry of National Security has these Explorers Youth Clubs
Right.
that they've started. And it's a move in the right direction because you start at that level.
Yes, yes.
Correct.
And then you have people growing up with values and good values and so on. And they're properly socialized, and then we have a
Yes.
better society.
The
You know?
the thing with this family matters, as you're talking about young people, and I think I want to stress it, the young person is just the step
end.
in the door.
Yeah.
Entry.
Yeah.
The young person is not the focus.
Yes.
Yes.
The
The
family.
family,
family
is the
is-
That
focus.
is correct.
Yes.
So the young person just, he does the wise
They
said,
just
he
give us
gets
the pass into
in
the
door
home.
to say,
Yes.
right.
That is correct. To know what's happening
Right.
and how the
Then-
family can be better served
Then we get to
and
use
better
of the family.
function.
Exactly. So it's not a, again, this is where it's different.
So
not
it's a
pointing
holistic
out the
approach.
finger, Johnny is the problem, so Johnny needs to be fixed.
That is correct.
Right.
It's a holistic approach.
Yes.
The entire family
The
benefits.
family.
Yes.
Exactly.
The entire family benefits. Now, what do you see in terms of the future for this program and its continued impact on the federation, you know, on a
Yes.
whole?
So as I said, USAID left us with just so much rich training and knowledge and a model that is proven to be effective. It just left us with so much. But the fact is, they left us, and it's now ours. So we could do with it what works for us.
Oh, yes.
And so where I would like to see it go in the future, I would like to see a couple of things happen. I would like to see, for example, some of those 100 and something families that have benefited from that. I would like to see them become mentors to other families.
Yes.
Because remember I talked about the fact that not every family needs to come into this program.
Yes.
And so you may need family support in the community. Why not have a grouping?
Yeah.
So
Parent
that
support
a parent
group.
support group where these people, these families who've been through it, who know exactly how to, it's not just about talk, to know exactly how to help to change directions.
Yes.
So that is something I would love to see happen. I would love to see the concept of the model expanded into other areas. So we use the model, and we use the model very intentionally for families. But there are some core concepts of the model that could be used in so many other areas.
Yes.
So in other words, we could talk to a parenting group about how to change language. We could talk to a church group about how to include how to do an echo map
Yes.
and include
Yeah.
everybody to support the family. I mean, the point is that there are concepts within the model that we could use
Yes.
to just sort of strengthen. So I would like to see this. I would like to see it continue to grow. I mean, when we started in in particular communities that were identified. So I would like to see this become something that we do, right across the island.
Yes.
And eventually I would like to see this program grow. I mean, obviously, it's ours now, and we have to, it's like taking some baby steps again. Now that it's ours, we have to sort of structure what we want. But I would like to see it grow. I'd like to see more family counselors come on, and so we're able to just use the program to our benefit. Each family counselor could manage about 10 to 12 families per cycle. So that's, if you have, each family counselor doing that, you have significant numbers of families that could be affected. So these are some of the things that I would like to see in the future. And I don't know if some of my other colleagues have things that they want to see.
Right, and we can end on that in terms of your recommendations for the program. I'm very happy to see that we have, people who are so enthusiastic and so engaged and love what it is that they do.
You could see
I can just see it. I mean, look at Elise here. I mean, this is, this is something actually that she just loves.
Yes.
And I can really see people gravitating towards her.
Yes.
And Jeremy as well.
Yes.
And you said that one of the things that wasn't mentioned, that I'm the sole male within our group of counselors, and again with the whole stigma of even male being counselors and counseling children and families. What has happened is that I guess of course with the decision of the decision makers have allowed me to be a part of the group, and I'm happy to be a part of the counseling unit as well, is that it has broken barriers where that is concerned. So I think that has been a plus within our group and unit. So that's something that I personally, for the future, I would love to see. More male counselors, because it helps a lot with the male youth that's within a family that we deal with from time to time. Because there's so many times, sometimes to some of the family counselors, they say, Jeremy, oh my God, I have this young boy and I don't know what to do. And I'll be like, okay, calm down. He's a boy. We'll get through this. So for me, my recommendation would be to see more male counselors, come on board. And once it's allowed and the government has the funding and everything to allow that, I would like to see that.
But good male counselors.
But good male counselors.
Like you.
Yes.
My recommendation is to, as you would have mentioned, more awareness for us to be able to provide our training to other departments, other groups, organizations that work with families. And also what I would like to see is the continuation of us being able to help families mitigate against everyday challenges that may arise. And there's hurricane season, and we start that conversation with them about preparedness. And I mean, for every season there is something that happens, and so we are able to start to plant these seeds. And once in doing so, we are able to preserve and to protect their mental health. And that is very important, because the more prepared we teach families to be, even when something happens, yes, they would freak out, but they have a plan. And once they have a plan, it shows the sustainability of our social and economic structure. Because then, I mean, you wouldn't see persons running into the stores buying all of these things and all of these. They already have a plan. So that's what I would like to see, sustainability.
Well, I want to thank all three of you for coming today and sharing on such a very important program. I mean, the family is at the heart of our societies. And the healthier our families are, the healthier our society. The healthier we all are, because we're individuals, but we also belong to family. And that is our social institutions. The family is really the foundation of all the social institutions. And so that is important that we deal with the family matters. And the family matters. Right? So it's a noun, as I said, and it's also is also a verb.
Yes.
So I thank you very much, Mr. Jeremy Thomas,
Thank you, sir.
family counselor, and
Miss Alicia Collins.
Miss
thank you.
Miss Alicia Collins, a beautiful smile.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alicia. And of course, Mrs. Michelle Della Kudrebre, Director
Yes.
of the Counseling
All
Department,
right. Thank
the
you so
Ministry
much
of
for-
Social Development.
Yes. Thank you so much for having us.
You are welcome anytime.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank
right.
you.
Thank you for having
you.
us.
You have been listening to another edition of Working for You. I want to thank all of our listeners to today's program. Next week we will be back for another Working for You program. Until then, I am Les Roy Williams. Take care.